Hello and welcome to episode 101 of Decentralized Revolution, a podcast from the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus and Mises PAC. I'm Aaron Harris and I'm your host. This is, as I said, episode 101. We just had episode 100, the live episode with Scott Horton and Michael Heiss, talking about the Take Human Action Tour, which is in full swing by the time you hear this. So go to takehumanactiontour.com to find out about the dates that are convenient for you. New York has probably already happened by this point, but Chicago, Nashville, which I'll be hosting that event. Then Austin, which our guest for today is going to be at that event, and that is April 29th and 30th. The Nashville one is April 22nd and 23rd. Then after Austin, it's on to Oakland and then Denver. And Denver's on Memorial Day weekend. So you really want to check these out. There's a great lineup at each one. And then, of course, the free campaign training events on the Sundays after the speakers on Saturday. It's all part of the Project Decentralized Revolution strategy, getting those 100 plus. I think we've got 200 or so people signed up to get campaign training to be a candidate or campaign manager to run for local office as Libertarians this year, 2023, and next year, 2024. And my guest today, who, as I mentioned, is going to be at the Austin event, along with Maj Toure, Scott Horton, Antonia Okafor, Mike Meharry, and Murray Sabrin. Josie, the Redheaded Libertarian, is my guest today, and we did record this one a couple of weeks ago, and just a couple of weird things happened, scheduling things, and it's all my fault. But Josie was kind enough to record a little while ago, and so I think everything's still relatively current. And but you just get a taste of what Josie's like if you don't know her from her work with Timcast, and of course she's all over Twitter. She's got a great presence on there, so you want to check her out. Links to all that stuff that she does, in addition to the Take Human Action Tour stuff, is going to be over at decentralizedrevolution.com/101. And let's get to it with my talk with Josie, the Redheaded Libertarian. Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you, Josie. Mike Heiss has told me a lot about you, and I've checked out some of your stuff here recently. So for those people who don't know you too well, just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into this whole libertarian thing.
Sure. My name is Josie. I am the Redheaded Libertarian over on Twitter, and I do outside media work at timcast.com. I've always kind of been a libertarian, and I didn't really find that out until 2012 when I found the Ron Paul Revolution. And I still was kind of looking for a place to be myself. So around 2017, I got onto Twitter and I started making friends, and then more friends, and then more friends. And now I've got an account of about 330,000.
Wow, that's I don't know how you can do it, because every time I go on Twitter, my mental health just like goes in the toilet. I can't take it. So, but I know there are a lot of good people who are doing good things on there. So, what's your take on Twitter, especially from a libertarian perspective, over the last few months since Elon took it over? How was it before, and what's it like now?
Well, to start, I was banned for a year and a half. Never knew why, but the day after Elon announced he was going to buy Twitter, I got my account back randomly the next day.
Wow.
So, yep. And from there, I grew it from, I had about 72,000, and I grew it up to what I have now over the course of about 9 months. So I'm loving not being shadow banned. I'm loving having my account back. I like the free speech. I love the things that are able to trend now that were never really able to trend before. Whether it's about war or the vaccine or anything controversial, we're able to talk about it now.
I've noticed that too. Like, again, I check in there 2 or 3 times a week, and I like you. I am very heartened by things that you do see. Not only do you see it in your feed, because I basically only follow libertarians and like baseball stuff, but like you see it not only in your feed but in the trending thing. It's pretty amazing. What is your take on? So I think I've heard a couple other people say that the blue check marks pre-Elon, one of the reasons they're so upset about all this is because they just had this little playground. They had the status of being, hey, I work for the Washington Post or whatever, so therefore my opinions are more valid. And I think that it's funny now that they don't have that and that anybody can get a blue check mark. I think it just further reinforces what a lot of people already thought, which was how deeply unimpressive a lot of these people are. So what's are they still complaining about that? I thought they were all going to leave and go somewhere else. What are they saying now?
Well, they're always bloviating about that, but I bought a check mark because for me, I like to do long form videos on Twitter. And so I'm able to do that. I'm able to have a 4, 5, 6 minute video if I want on Twitter now. And that was what was important to me to have it. So you still get people who come at you like, I can't believe you bought a check mark. Like, I can't believe you pay $8 to use a free app. And it's like, well, I pay for the perks. And another thing is like, if you pay for it, your comments go right to the top. So you're first seen and it helps you grow. It helps you grow your brand, so there's a lot of perks to having it. I don't really see too many blue checks complaining anymore about it. And as far as I know, everybody's going to have to go to this paid system soon enough, because Elon had said that there's a lot of corruption in who got a blue check and who didn't. So
yeah,
he's going to put everyone at the same starting line.
Yeah, I always thought that was like really, really interesting that certain people who were very well known and well established, if they were just not quite 100% in the mainstream, they just for some reason couldn't get it. And I think it's I hope more and more comes out about all that. And the one thing I think we all knew as libertarians, but that is still just jaw dropping to me that like normal people don't talk about, is the extent to which the FBI and other government agencies were, it's basically was, effectively kind of a PR arm for the regime, right? Like if you have those people literally in the building, or, can get somebody on Slack right away and you're complying with all their requests, like how different is that from like a state-run media channel?
It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
There is no different. It's unconstitutional. It's not a free market. It's not the free market at all. That's the government controlling speech. That's exactly what it is, and it's horrifying that happened and that it is still happening. I mean, maybe not at Twitter as much, but at other places it's still happening, and that's terrifying that it's happening.
So, what's working for you as far as getting a libertarian message out there these days in the new environment?
I'm just able to tweet freely now. I don't have to censor myself the way that I used to. And censorship just is the worst possible thing. It's terrible, especially like I was forced to be censored for 1.5 years, but even when I was there, I had to be careful of how I said my words. I had to avoid topics. Now I can speak freely, and I'm able to do that. And speaking freely is the best way to get your message across.
Mm-hmm. So what sort of themes or approaches seem to work best for reaching people who are kind of close to libertarianism but aren't quite there yet? Like I spent a lot of time thinking about those type of people who kind of get it, but then once in a while they have this like horrible take. And but I think that somebody who is engaged on Twitter, a bigger chunk than in a lot of other places, I think they're maybe a little more willing to listen to another viewpoint. So what's working to bring people who maybe are conservative or are, moderates or, old school liberals? What do you see, if anything, that's bringing those people our direction?
I'm finding ways to reach them when I'm able to go on shows, like I went on Timcast in real life just this past week, and I'm able to talk as a libertarian, but be myself and talk about my ideas, and people are able to see that they're kind of similar to me. A lot of people hear libertarian and they think this is this extreme faction of something, like they were fringe, and they realize they might be a libertarian too. And being able to spread my ideas through podcasting in that way brings a lot of people in. I also find that I host spaces on Twitter, and I find that when I can host a debate in a space, that brings people in, because debates are never for you and the other person. You're rarely going to change a mind. Yep. But the people that are watching, your audience, those are the fence sitters, and those are the people who aren't really sure, or maybe think they have a conclusion but don't really know, and those are the people who are watching, and those are the minds you're going to change. So I find doing spaces, going on podcasts, even retweeting something with a very normal take, that might be, they might have an extreme take, I might have just a normal take on it. Those are ways to all bring people towards the liberty movement when they see that they're a lot like you.
Yeah. Do you get a sense that some of the fallout from the virus stuff and it seems like every couple of weeks or something, there's a little bit of information from this department or that department, or showing that they knew they screwed something up, or masks didn't work, or whatever. Like, I would think so. At the beginning of all this, a couple of months into, after March 2020, like I was really disheartened by how many Americans just totally laid down and took it, right? Like they didn't fight back, they didn't question. And I can see the first couple of weeks you're waiting to see, because at the beginning they were like, oh, this thing can incubate for 15 days and then people start dropping dead. So like I was a little, my parents are old, I was a little careful and all that stuff. So, but after a couple of weeks, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of what I think it is. But so many Americans didn't do that. But then, we have 2.5, 3 years of this. I hope that somehow we can reach people, and that when we say, hey, we were right all along, and if we can do that without coming across as too much of a jerk, like, do you think that I got to believe there's at least some chunk of the American people who will be like, yeah, we totally got screwed, and I'm never going to look at the media or the government the same way again.
I think that the pandemic was eye-opening for a lot of people in that regard. I think that you went one way or the other. It either opened your eyes or you got more crazy. Mm-hmm. There's no middle ground. There's no one who just kind of was like sitting on the fence the whole time. Like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go with the flow. It's like, no, you either are, have 6 vaccinations, wear a mask everywhere still, or you're just like, whatever, I'm just going to roll with it. Like we're kind of like that at this point. We're smart. We'll play it by ear if something happens like this again. I mean, I have my thoughts on the pandemics happen every 100 years. So if they're threatening more pandemics, it's not good.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, we're going to be smart about things, but we're also logical. We're highly logical people.
Yeah. I always thought a couple of months into it that the part of it that really struck me the most was the fact that sort of what we were supposed to do kind of changed every week. It's like, first, okay, I distinctly remember at first they were like, well, keep 6 feet apart, and if you can't do that, wear a mask. And then a couple of days later, it's like, oh no, you need to wear a mask everywhere. And then it was, again, just all kinds of things shifting. And I felt like this was a big game of Simon Says, and it hit me that it's like, oh, they're just running through all this stuff to see what people will put up with, and what people will do. So I always was of the opinion, I still am, that I think that was a dress rehearsal for something worse. So
I'm really worried about this avian flu that they're talking about. Like, just in my circles, messages that I get, DMs that I get, I'm worried about this one. This one scares me.
I haven't heard that one yet. I know that there's been a couple of times in my life where I've heard of that. Every once in a while, it's the swine flu or the avian flu. Mm-hmm. So is that
they're trying
narrative coming?
Yeah, so this one, they did gain of function to get it to transfer to humans, and there's a 60% fatality rate.
Okay. That's
So
not good.
yeah, not good, not good at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I get other things that it's all unverified as other, that's all I know that is verified, but I get unverified DMs from people who are within different factions that might know different things that are all scaring me, all on the same page. But I don't know. I'm hoping that, there's a natural immunity or something that, because it was in Cambodia where it was transferring to
Yeah.
humans. I don't know. I don't know much. I know there's a lot of jungle in Cambodia. I don't
Yeah.
know much beyond that. So I don't know. It's all speculation. I hope we don't get an avian flu, but yeah, the swine flu, the avian flu, it all circulates every now and then. So we'll see.
Yeah.
It's probably just another nothing burger.
Hopefully.
Mhm.
So one thing, and I'd be interested in your take on this, that over the last week or so, we're recording this on February 27th, that there's just been the couple of times when I have gone on Twitter, there's just like tons of debate on like national divorce. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene said something about it. And of course, all the Liz Cheney types came after her on that. And, a couple of years ago, really the Mises Caucus for 5 years, we've been pushing, hey, we need to decentralize this. We cannot continue going down this road. We have to allow different cities and states to do different things. We have to push nullification and things like that. And so it's amazing. And in just a few years, of course, we're not the only ones, but that phrase and that idea is now sort of being widely talked about. And it's the fact that it's bringing a lot of backlash from a lot of the old blue checkmark types. Like, it tells me we're over the target. So what do you think about that?
Well, from a constitutional standpoint, it is unconstitutional.
Well, it's not. Now, let me stop you right there. It's
Texas,
absolutely not.
No, Texas v. White ruled it unconstitutional in 1869. So it technically is. It technically is by a SCOTUS ruling unconstitutional. That doesn't mean it can't be overturned. That doesn't mean we can't relook at it. But this isn't my opinion.
Right.
It's not my opinion. This is
right.
I dug into this to see. And so right after they passed the Reconstruction Amendments, which made being able to divorce like nearly impossible because anything is going to look like treason. You've seen how loose they've thrown the word treason and they're just throwing it around.
Right.
So after they did that, they wanted to prosecute Jefferson Davis. That was what they wanted to do. That never happened because no judge would touch that because our country was built on a national divorce. Our country was built on it. So nobody wanted to touch it. So they ended up just throwing it away. And Jefferson Davis was never charged with treason.
Right.
So, but then after that happened, after they passed the Reconstruction Amendments, after he never goes down for treason, they just quickly passed this little SCOTUS ruling, Texas v. White, that says, no, you can't do that. You can't divorce. And that's all. And then it just fell into history and that's it. So it's on pages that it is, but if that were to be brought back up again with like our Supreme Court, it's unconstitutional. Like, that's the thing. Like they ruled it unconstitutional, but the ruling itself is unconstitutional.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing is like, there's a ton of Supreme Court rulings that are on the face of them.
Exactly. Like Plessy versus Ferguson was overturned by Brown versus the Board of Education. This happens. Dred Scott overturned it. It just because something is a ruling doesn't mean it can't be overturned, but they pushed a lot of crap through in the 1800s that should not have been passed through. And I believe national divorce was one of them. So,
yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things where if a state were to do that, New Hampshire or Texas, or I hope Tennessee, because I'm in Tennessee, like, okay, we did it. So what are you going to do? I think that one argument
for treason, like, what are you going to do? What's the next step? Exactly.
Right. And I think it's interesting that people, and even some of the, I don't know what to call them, the sort of blue-pilled or, regime libertarians or whatever are all saying this. It's like, oh, you pushing national divorce, you're just advocating another civil war. And it's like, oh, so you think it's okay? Do you think that, and people who are, anybody who's saying you can't do this, it's been decided, it's basically saying, okay, if we leave, you're going to send tanks in to murder people who did this. Like, what are you listening to yourself? And like you said, like the whole country is built on, the Declaration of Independence, which explicitly states, it's the right of the people to alter or abolish it, right? So it's so funny to me watching these people who, claim to, advocate the Constitution, especially, like the Liz Cheney types or whatever like that, like, the Declaration of Independence precedes the Constitution, but like the whole framework is that it's a compact of the states, and people saying, hey, if you don't want to stay in this agreement forever, then we will kill you. Like that's so bizarre to me that a person would actually think that.
Imagine staying in a marriage because the person you were with is going to kill you if you don't. That's what it is.
No, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And it goes back to, and if you kind of take that analogy, like all the other sort of stuff the government does, it really kind of is what an abusive, husband would do. It's like, well, I'm the only one who can protect you. So like all the stuff that, the spy balloons and the viruses and all this stuff, it's like, well, if the government weren't there, then that stuff would get us, Yep. So it's the whole thing is almost exactly like an abusive relationship. And the fact that it doesn't surprise me anymore, but it used to surprise me that someone could see something very clearly on one issue, but then take it over to another sphere and they totally throw out their values and their logic. And all that. So I don't know how you talk to somebody like that.
I try not to take it personally. Anything like I keep my feelings out of it, and I'm able to just engage and just ask questions. And a lot of times you can ask them questions until they walk themselves into a circle or contradict themselves, and then you're like, right there. And that's the part that you would hone in on. So being able to talk to somebody is like a science at this point. A lot time is because you're talking, maybe you're talking to each other online and you can't sense tone. Yep. So you have to kind of be able to use your words, wordsmith very calmly, like be able to have a tone perceived that isn't threatening. And that's difficult to do right now.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, is that the Declaration and the Constitution there behind you, I guess?
Yes, it is. Yes.
So I always I'm kind of of two minds about that. I generally come down on the Lysander Spooner, side of things, but you look at history that and even though the Constitution, I think was basically a coup, that it was all the people who passed it had financial interest in setting something up that way, the banking system, but even with all that, it has kind of kept government at bay, I think longer than it would have otherwise. Do you think but again, I don't really, I think that a lot of conservatives think that somehow there's like a magic wand that if we find this wand, we're just going to go back to the Constitution and everything will be just like, James Madison, wanted it. So I have a hard time, like, do I, as a libertarian, argue from a constitutional perspective or not? And I'm guessing maybe that do you like to use the Constitution? And so, yeah, tell me about that.
So I'm a Bill of Rights libertarian.
Yeah.
Anything that they passed that didn't abuse their power could have all been done under the Ninth Amendment. They didn't need to add extra amendments like this. They could have just said, oh, no, this is constitutional because the Ninth Amendment says, because we didn't write it down, doesn't mean that you can't. Doesn't mean it's not a right. As long as it's a negative right, which is something that you don't need another person to help you with, like a positive right would be healthcare, education, things that you need somebody else's somebody else to help you with, the government to help you with, or another person to help you with, then that becomes a positive right. But negative rights, like your speech, your protest, things like that, like that's all constitutional. Why I am such a big supporter of the Bill of Rights is the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment. And that's the states' rights amendment. And that is what kept states like Florida and South Carolina and South Dakota all becoming California and New York during the pandemic, because they were trying to bring stuff down and the states were like, they were either like, okay, we're going to follow these WHO guidelines or whatever, or they're like, no, we're going to do our own thing and we're going to be fine. And that is our fail safe. So whenever the federal government became too powerful, the 10th Amendment was able to step in and say, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. And that's what holds out. That's the last, that's the fail safe. That's the last piece that holds our country together, is the 10th Amendment.
And I think that I agree with you there, that I think that's the one thing that we really should be stressing. Michael Bolden, the 10th Amendment Center, they've been doing work on this for, I think he's been around 15 years or so now, trying to get states to pass bills like Defend the Guard, or to legalize a particular substance or something like that. And then when it's challenged in court or in the court of public opinion, it's like, hey, we don't have, the federal government doesn't have the right to tell us what to do on this. And so I think that's the one thing that I still like talking about national divorce, but like if the compromise position in the midterm ends up being that the 10th Amendment is respected, then I think we've gotten a lot farther along than we would have been. What are you seeing what do you think now that the virus stuff is over? What do you think might be things that might work as far as getting states to assert their their differences from the federal government on? What do you see out there?
I believe, I think that we're seeing it. We're seeing states stronger now than they've been since like the Civil War. More like I'd actually had a conversation recently about how when we were kids, oh, I want to move to Florida because it's sunny and it's warm and Disney World is there. But now you want to move to Florida because their governor is not a tyrant. And we're able to see the differences in the states. We're able to see 50 separate sovereign states at this point, as opposed to just, we're able to see these United States as opposed to the United States. We're able to see the differences now. I think that's really important in moving forward, because states are starting to kind of get their own identities again when it comes to how they want to live, what their people want, what their state legislatures want. And I think that's the way forward. I've always felt like it was a more pragmatic way forward, is strong states' rights, identifiable states' rights, where we look like 50 separate countries with trade agreements. That's how I see us moving forward pragmatically and logically. I think that probably happened before a national divorce. So that's just my opinion.
No, I think so. So give me your take on DeSantis. I mean, I can kind of tell from what you just said what you think about what he has done, but where do you think he's going? Is he going to try to other issues to play that 10th Amendment card for Florida? Is he going to run for president? Like, because I have my own thoughts, but I haven't really looked at him that much. But what do you see happening in Florida and with DeSantis in particular over the next couple of years?
Well, I moved to Florida for the governor because I moved from Massachusetts last year. There was a lot of tyranny. I had to protect my children because the trans agenda up there was really bad. It was coming for the kids. So I moved to Florida for the government, for the governor, who was doing everything that Massachusetts wasn't. And I voted for him for my governor. I didn't vote for him for my president. So I would like him to stay my governor and run out his term, or as long as he can be my governor. And then I would like to see him as president, but I'd like to see him run his course as governor first.
Yeah. So what would you like to see him do to push, take what he's done and keep going with it? If he were to stay and you were advising him, what would you tell him to do to make Florida that much better and that much different from the rest of the U.S.?
We need concealed carry. We need the carry permits. That's a big thing that we don't really have. They need to get rid of the red flag laws. That's another thing. He does a lot to protect children when it comes to the trans agenda, when it comes to CRT, when it comes to school shootings. He's perfect Like he was perfect.
Mhm.
And a lot of other states, like there's no one even close. And I think a lot of other states should take note of what he's doing and do it in their states. So when it comes to guns, they're not that great. It's not great here. So I would move that way. I'd move for medical or recreational marijuana. That'd be another thing that is really stupid to be banned. We don't here. So that'd be another libertarian way to move. But I mean, I like him. I think he's doing a great job. Everything that's important to me, he's working on,
Yeah.
and the state legislature is working on.
Let's talk a little bit about the CRT stuff and the trans stuff that he, obviously he's made a lot of headlines over that. Do you get the sense that the mood in the country is like shifting on that stuff at all?
Absolutely. I think that you're going one way or you're going the other. There's no one really in the middle ground on it.
Mm-hmm.
They're like opposed to it or you for it. And I think that we're seeing states go in one way or the other. And I like to see them opposing it for sure. But I think that national divorce makes sense in the fact that we are like so extreme on our views. You're either one way or you're the other, and there isn't a lot of middle ground left. So that makes sense in that way. But yeah, I see it.
What do you think? What do you think it is that since like I think this first kind of came onto the national scene with like the trans bathroom bill in like North Carolina or something 3 or 4 years ago. What have you seen that's happened over the last few years that has to the point now where I think people are starting to finally look at this and say, hey, what's going on? What has happened to make people look at it?
The drag shows.
Mm-hmm.
Drag shows. That's what's really doing it. Because it started with the bathrooms and men and women, biological men in female spaces, which is not okay. And then it went into the schools, and then it's like, oh, we don't want to discriminate against kids. And you're seeing the slippery slope happen.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, well, now we're going to do story time. We're just going to read books to your kids, right? But now it's drag shows. We are dancing provocatively for your children in a thong, and they're giving us money. And that's where people are like, nope, not happening. Yeah. That's where they snapped, because there's no reason that's not acceptance. They're not looking for acceptance when they want to shake their butt in front of your 7-year-old child.
Yep.
And people are logical enough to see that, and that's why it's getting shut down. That's why.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that people will sort of like defend that and say that you're kind of crazy for like even questioning that. Like, I mean, what kind of world did people live in that you would think that that's not at least somewhat questionable? Like you could debate like how much damage it does to somebody, but as a parent, it seems to me you would say, what good can come out of this? For not only you're supposed to protect your child from harm, but you're also supposed to put good things in their lives, and like what possible good thing could come out of taking a 10-year-old to something like that?
People are so afraid of being called a bigot, and they want to look like they're accepting, and they want to look like they wear their children as like status symbols. Mm-hmm. So if they have a woke kid, or if they have a trans kid, or it shows that they're doing a good job as a parent. Yeah. Like that's their status. And also if you have like a trans kid, then that's also a shield where you can't be criticized and your child can't be criticized. And you bring them like groomers hide in places where they are to be accepted without question. So we used to see that more in church, because it was a community place and you were trusted and everybody gathered there, and there were children. You had access to children, and you were a trusted adult with access to children. That was, exposed 20 years ago. And we don't really hear about that happening now anymore because it was exposed 20 years ago. Now it's in schools. Mm-hmm. Schools. If you were to Google sexual assault school, you're going to get 2 of them a week that we know about.
Yeah.
2. So that's just what we know about, like that twice a week, there are teachers being caught assaulting students twice a week.
Yeah.
So, if you want to add that up, that's just what we know about. I mean, that means probably happening a lot more if we're catching two of them, only two of them. So that's what they do. So the bad people didn't change. It's where they are accessing children changed. They found another place. And so they access children in schools. They access children in the LGBT community. That's another place that's protected and safe in a community.
Well, and I think you hit on something in there that I think people, just sort of normal, everyday Americans, something has happened over the last 20 years or so that, pardon me, that I think people, they don't want to be seen as not nice, right? Like, so I think a lot of this stuff has taken hold where, I'm obviously not for banning drag shows or whatever, when they take place among adults who want to be there and they're not publicly funded, that's fine. But the fact that people, because they don't want to be seen as intolerant or not nice or not compassionate, that we haven't stood up and like, oh, okay, no, we're not doing that here. I think that sometimes people will say, oh, you're a libertarian, it should be whatever people want to do. It's like, no, it's people should be able to, again, do what they want to do in their own spaces and not push things on everybody else. And simply standing up. And so now that people are kind of standing up and saying, hey, maybe we better not have this in school. Maybe we better not have this graphic novel that is an actual very graphic, sexually graphic novel in the thing. And oh, you're just a book burner and all this stuff. It's like, no, I'm the rational adult who's saying this should not happen. And I think more and more people have to be willing to take those, it's like if there's a hijacker on the plane and the guy with the gun has 6 bullets. Well, he can't keep the whole plane of 200 people, but no one wants to be the first person to stand up and get shot, right? But I think people are finally standing up and be like, okay, I'll take the beating on Twitter and say this is wrong. And it's amazing, I think, how quickly some of this stuff will change, and it will change in a libertarian way. It won't have to be done with laws, maybe repealing stuff that's already there, funding for stuff. But if people just stand up and say, nope, not doing it, not going along, not going to support it, that is, to me, that's the way out of this. I think it's starting to happen. I think that the fact that Twitter is now a freer place is maybe playing a part in that.
Yeah, and we're able to ridicule people, and ridicule goes a long way. When we make fun of these ideas, we used to not be able to make fun of these ideas. Can't make fun of an idea; it can snowball. But now we can make fun of ideas that are bad ideas, and people become a little more like questionable about whether or not they want to be as perverse as they're being, perhaps.
Yeah, I won't name who it was. If you know who it is and you want to say, you can, but because I can't quite remember all the details. But there was someone who was kind of on our general side of things who was saying, oh, you shouldn't ridicule people's ideas and things like that. You should always, come at them and with respect and understanding. And I think that is interpersonal relationships. And if you have, that's how you deal with people one-on-one. But in a public forum, like I think it's essential to use humor and mocking and stuff like that to get your point across, because that's the thing is the other side,
they're not going
the other side.
They're not going to be nice.
Right. And they haven't been nice. And they also have, talking about, you're mentioning that this is now all in the schools and stuff. And we see, again, on Twitter and other places, these crazy teachers who are, I'm sure, 1% of 1%, who are actually the really crazy ones, but they are playing the long game, right? The left has always played a long game. We will, we'll take over academia. We'll start, going into the other professions like HR and K through 12 and all this stuff. And they're willing to gradually push the envelope just a little bit, every year on this issue and then on that issue. And if you don't push back at that one way or another, sometimes it's just by noncompliance, sometimes it's by ridicule, they're going to keep going, and so I think it's like feeding the alligator, right, and hoping that he eats you last. Being nice to him. It's just like I'm not for violence or threatening people or whatever.
We're long past civility now at this point. Now it's ridicule, and it's dragging them mercilessly until they back off on this awful idea that they have. What I do, and I found is very productive, actually. Anytime somebody brings up book burning, all right, and they always say it's about Florida, right? Florida's burning books, and it's not something that we do, right? So I say, and I could get really graphic here, so I say, I'm like, what's your favorite part of genderqueer? Was it the incest, or was it the two little boys giving each other?
Yeah.
What's your favorite part? And that's it. That's because that's what they're protecting. So I'm like, all right, well, be specific. Okay, Lawn Boy, what's your favorite part? Was it the part where the 10-year-old got, or his friend got by the adult male? Which one? Or was when they fought over the adult male as if it was a consensual thing?
Mm-hmm.
Which one? See, this is how gross these books are. And these are the books that Ron DeSantis burns. So I asked the adults that are defending them. I actually ratioed the mayor of New York City on it.
That guy.
Never answered me. They never answer.
Wow. Yeah, that's and the whole concept of like book burning, like deciding, obviously
taking porn out of middle school libraries. That's not book burning. Book burning is changing the words of a Roald Dahl book, which is what they are doing. That is changing the words. That is closer to book burning than taking porn out of a library.
Well, but also with a public school, like you can't have every single concept in the curriculum. You can't have every book in the library. So there is some exclusion and selection going on. And so to select some things in favor of others and to make it age appropriate is not anything close to banning books. Like it's just like, oh, we're not going to put it in there. And we're not restricting anybody's access to
They want to use the stigma because that's what they have. They have in the way that we have our humor, they have their words and their name calling and their stigmas. And so that's what they do. So that's why they call someone a racist or a Nazi. But when you say your words have no power here, that's it. You've neutralized them. You've disarmed them. The same thing goes for book burning. It's like, that is not book burning. That is not book burning. That is porn in libraries. And we are getting rid of it because there's no place for porn with an 11-year-old. No place.
Right. And one could argue it's even worse than that because it's got an explicit message that's, it's not just a dirty picture. It's a narrative, saying that this is okay. And, it's really, really, really bad.
I agree.
So what do you think? I know you go on Timcast. What has made him so as big and as popular as he is?
I'm biased because he is one of my dear friends, but he will talk to anybody and he will push back against anybody and he will let people speak and he will ask them questions. And he's always done that. And that is something people are craving in society, for that sort of open communication. They want that. And that's something that he's just always done. He found he cornered that market, and he's like, this is what we're going to do. And that's why Joe Rogan's so popular. That's why Steven Crowder's so popular. They have they'll talk to anybody, and that's what we want now. We need that. We crave that in our society.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. Like when Joe Rogan first started getting popular, I was like, I don't get it. Like he's just like sits around and talks to people and it's okay. But like, I guess I wasn't, I guess because I was already kind of punched out from the media and wasn't like, I didn't see the significance of that until a couple of years into his popularity. It's like, oh, I see, because you can't find this anywhere else. And I think that should show people just what a strange time we're living in and how actually really, really dangerous the regime is that when simply having a mature, respectful conversation with someone is like this revolutionary taboo thing. And I think I think you're right about that's kind of Tim's appeal too. And Tim is, I think, from what I've heard, he's not. I think Joe kind of, tries to be very agreeable and will let people say things and not push back much. But the way Tim does it, I think, does it in a really good way. That is, he's not like, oh, you're a racist, get off my show. He's just like, oh, this is why I think you're wrong. Mm-hmm. And so what's it like being part of that? Not being on a show that big and all, what kind of feeling do you get doing that kind of work?
I feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. I feel like I have a purpose bigger than myself. And it's not just like my purpose is like my children, because I'm growing the next generation, and they have to be wonderful and amazing. So that's my main purpose. But this other thing that I do, my work, is also another purpose, and it's an enormous one. I feel like I can be part of spreading a message and opening people's eyes up to liberty and freedom and things that they may have forgotten about or never really even knew existed, and how that all works. And I just feel like that's so important, and I'm thankful and I'm blessed every day that I get to do what I do, and that I've built what I've built, and that I have the friends that I do, and I'm just humbled and grateful.
Yeah. Is he still getting, like, I know for a while there he was getting swatted once in a while and all that hasn't
happened in a while, which is good. He got swatted 20 times last year. So it hasn't happened in a while, which is
it just like a couple of people, or is it coordinated? And if you can't talk about it, that's fine. But like,
what happens with the swattings?
Yeah. Like, is it just random people doing it, or is it a concerted effort?
They don't know who's doing it. I don't think they ever found out who's doing it, but they knew it was happening. And by that point, they would have to run through the motions, and all 20 times that it happened, they have to shut everything down and have the place inspected. And it was more of an inconvenience and a nuisance than anything. But when you're swatting somebody, you're trying to get men with guns to go into their house and shoot them. That's the goal. That's what you want to happen. You want an irresponsible police officer to do it. Yeah. So, I mean, the first time it happened, I was terrified. I was so worried. Then after that, the police became familiar and they were cautious, and, it was a little easier. But yeah, I don't swat people. It's bad.
Yeah. It's
horribly dangerous.
Well, you should never call the police for any reason ever. Mm-hmm. And if you do have to call the police, you call your lawyer first and have him call the police for you.
That's very simple.
Yeah. So you're going to be, I think, on at least one of the Take Human Action tour stops, I think, in Austin, right?
Yes, I'll be in Austin for sure. Really, fingers crossed, hoping I somehow get put in Nashville because it's so close to me. But Austin, I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm actually in Knoxville, and I'm going to be our host for the Nashville thing. So if you get to, I'll see what I can do if we can fit you in there. But so what? Just give me your take on, what we're trying to do at the Mises Caucus. What do you like about it, and what could we do? What could we do better? And what are you going to tell us? A little sneak preview of that. What are you going to tell us in Austin?
In Austin, I'm going to be talking about the Articles of the Confederation and what happened at the Constitutional Convention, the 5 major arguments that happened that shifted us from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution, and kind of that process of how that worked. So I'll just be telling that story, essentially. Mises Caucus, I love what you guys are doing. I'm a small L libertarian. Even in my title, the Redheaded Libertarian, I have a small L, and a lot of people, it either makes them mad or they get it right away. It depends. I did that because the party, the old regime before Mises came in and took over, repelled me. Like they were Democrats. That's all they were. And they used all the same language and the identitarianism, and I didn't want any part of it because it wasn't libertarianism. And you guys came in and we're aligned. We're aligned in just about every single faction, whether it comes to life or freedom or anything. And I was like, all right, well, this works. I'm able to feel like I can speak with you guys, and I feel like we're aligned in a way that I can help now, which is great because I didn't feel that before.
Well, I'm glad too. And that's the thing, is we're all about coalition building, and we'd like for people to join the LP. For one reason or another. Not everybody is going to, but we work together on the things we agree on, and I'm sure there's like a 95% overlap between us and you, whereas some of the people at the war rally, there might be a 10% overlap, but it's the important 10%. So I'm glad that you and other people like you are taking that, seeing our thinking on that and saying, yeah, let's run with this. We don't have to be together on 100% of things, but we do need to work together when we can. So I'm really glad to be able to have you on the tour. Look forward to that. Tell us just a little bit, what are you doing right now? How can people connect with you? And we'll put all that on the show notes page too. But what if people haven't checked you out yet? How do they do that? That's okay.
Sorry. I was like, oh no.
The sneeze happens right at the right time. Right. Go ahead.
Right. So you can find me on Twitter at TRHL official. Also on YouTube at the Redheaded Libertarian and the redheadedlibertarian.com. You can go there and find all of my links to all of my fun things. Yeah, I mean, I go on podcasts and I do my spaces and I'm on Twitter, and this is just my life and I'm just loving it.
Yeah, well, keep up the good work. I hope I'll see you. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to Austin, but we really appreciate you helping us out, and we'll be in touch. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me, Aaron.
All right, there you have it. I'd like to thank Josie for her time and for her wisdom, and just for all that she does, mixing it up on Twitter for the Libertarian movement. I really appreciate what she does, and to have her as part of the Timcast crew is great too, of course. And I really want to thank her for planning to be with us in Austin at the Take Human Action Tour on April 29th. Go to takehumanaction.tour.com to get your tickets and find out about who else is going to be there. And if you can't make it to Austin, come to one of the other events. Thanks to my co-producer, Simon Kalpin, and thanks to Dave versus Goliath for all the music you hear on Decentralized Revolution. Check us out at decentralizedrevolution.com, and the show notes page for this one is, of course, after the .com, you do the /101. And thanks to everyone who shares, rates, reviews, and subscribes to Decentralized Revolution. Please do that, especially with the new stuff coming. You want to, more people need to see what we're going to be putting out. And so I appreciate you helping us out there. And if you want to subscribe to our email list to find out about what's going on before it happens, and if you want to give to Mises PAC, go over to takehumanaction.com. And I really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.